I really wish pouring oil without a funnel was an Olympic sport. Welcome back to Lost Cause Ranch, and today we are doing a bit of housekeeping with the rover ball and all the machines showing up lately. A lot of what was on the docket got neglected. So today, we got some catching up to do. The Freelander is still in Ohio, which means the Loner NAS Defender is still in Iowa. Before we swap them out, we are going to do some fluid changes. We traveled roughly 4,500 miles across the country in this guy, so everything needs to be freshened up before we give it back to its owner. As much as I'd like to keep this thing, it's just not in the cards. But after we got the fluids changed in this guy, we got some more rearranging to do on the workshop side. We are getting things tucked into place, which is creating a lot more space to actually work in. Everything's starting to shape up, but out back is a disaster. So I guess what I'm saying is we got some chores to do today. That was smooth. Trying to hold the camera and undo the oil filter. I just launch it instead. Somehow I always manage to create more work for myself. Own worst enemy. I mean, we just frickin' missed the pan. So close. Can barely even tell. But looking under here, it appears that we have an oil cooler installed on this guy. By we, I mean someone else, but that is probably why this one did considerably better than this guy. Traveling through the Rockies in Colorado. Now starting to climb the temp gauge. Interestingly enough though, correct filter doesn't fit. At least I didn't throw the old one away yet, so we can cross-reference what we need to put. We got a different threaded adapter than... Alright, we got this crossed over to something we can pick up in town, which will work out because we have some other stuff to grab to finish up my chores. And so far, even though it is not quite as roomy as the LR4 inside, the L405 is still looking to be pretty useful. We went ahead and grabbed ourselves an engine hoist, but while I was ordering that online to pick up at my local Advanced Auto, I noticed they had some load levelers, which are awful handy when pulling engines, and they happen to be on clearance. Normally $54.99 a piece, on clearance for $10.94. So I bought all 8. Would have bought more, but that's all they had. And we also got a 15% off coupons. I don't need 8 of them, but how do you pass that up? Also figured out that the filter crosses to a Ford, so we grabbed ourselves a filter that actually fits. Do you guys even have any idea how leveled our loads are going to be around here? I really wish pouring oil without a funnel was an Olympic sport, because I'd at least get a bronze medal. So working on a little rearranging, just so we have enough real estate to get through on the other side of the hoist when something is on it. As with most of us in life, space is limited here, so I think we'll keep the bench here that is up towards the front end of whatever vehicle will be on the hoist, so we can set all our broken bits that we'll be removing on the bench. The white toolbox has most of the common, heavier used tools. Red one has the less used stuff, so we'll keep that over there. But I think with what we're working with, that is the ticket. This weekend, after getting everything moved over to this side, has been the first time I've really felt good about the car wash. Everything has been pretty cluttered from moving the house and shop to here. Even though the car wash is bigger than the ranch shop was, we added quite a bit of stuff. And without the ceiling height, it has felt much smaller. This makes me feel like we can actually do something with this place, which I guess is the point. We'll try not to lose anything down the drain. I guess we'll start with box 1. Hopefully this goes a tad bit better than the press brake did. All right, so now we have to, and it freaking faulted out again. There is far less computers involved here. Probably should have put this in first. Now I need another hand. So those 72 load levelers that I bought, this is what they are. So it's pretty much just an Acme screw that allows you to kind of adjust the load center by changing the pivot point. And what you'll see there is we can pick up, the further we move this over, the higher this end gets. So when you have something that isn't quite picked up level, this guy will change that. Now moving those guys was not the reason we went and picked this up, but it sure made it easier. I haven't had to use a cherry picker for quite some time because at the commercial shop, Ted and I had a forklift. Then at the shop at the ranch, we had that gantry crane we built. This isn't quite as convenient, but Chet's scared of every single noise, so he hasn't been a whole lot of help lifting stuff up around here. So here we are. So the real reason why we bought this guy is right there. That is what we are going to start on, getting a handle on what is a disaster behind the car wash. Problem there is it's locked, and I can't find the key because I believe the key is in a Freelander, which happens to be 10 hours away in Ohio. I have 2 keys. I think one of them's inside, which doesn't really help. This would be much easier if I had a key. Voila. No, I'm not a skilled car thief. With the service shop and the dealership, we just used to have to do this fairly often. Slide the airbag in, blow that up, that pries the door frame out. Then we just stuck the rod into that space, went down, and pulled the lock up. And unfortunately, the spare key's not in here. I thought I left it in the cup holder, but apparently I did the smart thing and tied it together with the other key and then left it in the Freelander. But this right here is why we have the van. You can obviously see a lot. No, this is a 6-liter LS-based engine with a 4L80 transmission, and you guys following along for a bit may have seen this in the background at the ranch. It was the oldest work van at one of my buddy's companies and came down with a key security issue and no longer starts. And with the condition of the rest of the van, told me it was time to probably just put this out to pasture and get a nicer one for the guys, even though this is super nice. And we went ahead and bought it off them as a donor for something in the future. Nah, I'm just kidding. Maybe way in the future for that one. But no, it is always good to have a decent running LS laying around, along with some chunky tires. But besides the keys missing, the dilemma here is I bought a storage container, and I had them place the storage container out of the way of the front of the building. But with our pile of gravel that we're going to need for the future, that completely blocked off the back of the building. Like I've always said, I am my own worst enemy. What that does mean, though, is we got to get creative with unloading the back here. So now that we got it pivoted into what is somewhat a reasonable position to get it in the shop, we can put it in neutral. I had the rear wheels locked. If the rear wheels were free spinning, it would have just pulled right into the side of the building and we wouldn't have been able to get it to turn into here. All right, without it running, it is very hard to turn the wheel. So what we're gonna do is rock this guy back and forth via the winch till we get it cranked all the way. I honestly don't know how I could live without having a winch on the front of the LR4. When you're running solo on a lot of stuff, that just makes life so much easier. We're just gonna go ahead and start tearing into this guy. It is quite a bit more fun pulling something apart that you can break. It's hard to believe, but there is actually an engine in there, really in there. Good news is, on a van, you get to see a whole lot more of the engine from the inside, and it appears to actually be there. I don't know what kind of notes we're getting passed on this thing, but we have dust Q and dust lower. Guess someone wasn't happy with the cleaning job. But right here lies our dilemma with a van chassis. They don't give you a whole lot of real estate. We got a couple different ways we can go about it. First one is to get the intake manifold off the engine, and we would do that from the inside, and then that would give us enough room to choke down on this guy. Second option, and what I'm probably going to deal with, is undoing a few of the body mounts, mainly the first 4 up front, then swinging the hoist arms under and lifting the body up a few inches. That should give us enough room to slide this guy in there. Only problem is rust. And a lot of times something that looks like this has body mount bolts that don't want to come out. If you Southern boys think working on cars is easy, come visit the Rust Belt once and just see how much fun you can freaking have. But that is where we're gonna leave you guys off on this. Pulling this guy apart isn't that exciting, but in the next video, we'll show you what's inside the van that we need to empty out for the office. Then pretty much it's just taking the wheels and tires, and this guy is gonna be a soup can. And just for kicks, we're gonna see if this guy is still throwing a tantrum. Shocker. Doesn't even allow me to do it safely. One more time. Man, when it does actually work, it creates a real nice bend. But so far, my experience with this guy has been unacceptable, so we will have to figure that out. And the saga of the CNC press brake continues. And with that being said, appreciate you guys watching, appreciate you subscribing. I'm not sure how it's gonna time out, but on the next video, we're either gonna be hooking up our CNC mill to power, along with getting power to the rest of our little machine shop fabrication area, or we may just be exploring this guy a little bit further, mainly in the wheel department. But either way, we're finally starting to rock and roll around here at the car wash and getting rid of some stuff, mainly a big old van, because pretty soon we're gonna have to be able to get to that guy. We got some neat stuff coming for the Kalahari, and we also have to get this guy into something before the Land Rover event out in Moab.